to end because with great power comes great responsibility. To work with kids is to be an Avenger. And to be a poet is to be a Peter Parker. An everyday person with radioactive blood flowing through your veins since high school. Room 2116. That's when I learned Spider-Man could be a black boy. Since then, I've been swinging through my city, weaving poems together tighter than web fibers to try to catch someone at their lowest. I'm not a hero. I've just proved that art and elbow grease might save someone's life. Like, once, I met a boy who didn't know his creativity stemmed from STEM. Science was his passion, bright as the sun, but bullies burnt him out the fastest. He was always glitching, like he was always an anomaly forced into occupying the wrong universe, so they called him ADHD. Until he got into our program, started writing, got up on stage and said, I would have finished that line, but we ran out of funding. Right now, across the Spider-Verse, Thanos is snapping his fingers to this poem, but all it proves is that this story doesn't exist. This story never happened. This boy don't even got a name. He don't even got a face. Now his universe constantly folds in on itself like a reality forced to rewind. Reality folds in on itself. Universe doesn't even have a name. Boy don't exist. Thanos been snapping.
Welcome to Raw Talent. With your host, Miss Tink. Welcome to Raw Talent. Welcome to Raw Talent. With your host, Miss Tink. Welcome to Raw Talent.
Who is LaCroix?
Who is LaCroix? Let me spin the yarn and run it all the way back. My name is LaCroix Nixon. On stage, I go by Atlas. I'm a poet. I play drums for my church. Originally born in Charlotte, North Carolina. Raised in Williamsburg, Virginia. My family moved to Williamsburg. I believe it was 2002.
You don't hear many people moving to Williamsburg.
It's crazy, right? I'm glad you mentioned that. So my mom and dad, pastors, right? They were. Are you
a PK?
I am thoroughly a PK.
Okay.
So check this out. So my mom and dad, part of this church in Charlotte, right? They were being called in the ministry. Next thing you know, their pastor is like, "Hey, God is sending you to Williamsburg, out of all places. We don't got no family up here, no connections, no nothing, and it's Williamsburg. Who comes here?"
Right.
But they go. I have two younger brothers. The first of which had just been born in July. He was born 7 pounds, 7 ounces, in the 7th day, in the 7th month, in the 7th year of my mom and dad's marriage.
Wow.
That was their sign from God to like, hey, it's time to go. So that was July. August, I'm about 5 years old. He's about a month old. We in a U-Haul heading up the road. Yeah, so that was the origin story of us getting into Williamsburg, and from that point they started a church, which for two black pastors not from the area, I still don't know how they pulled that off. They did it though. They started in a hotel, kept things going, and for 16, 18 years, ran a church, Liberty Worship Center. That's pretty much where I grew up. That's where I just listened to my dad preach. My mom was very active in the church too. She would get up, not just preach, but to see not just a first lady, but a black female pastor that was just as active, had just as much voice in the church as the black male pastor. That was nuanced in the city. You didn't see that with a lot of churches.
You still don't.
With black and white preachers. So that's a little bit of my origin. As far as like my childhood, I don't have like a lot of like the trauma stories that a lot of artists have. Like, I have great relationship with my mom and dad. Even growing up, I had such a strong like community of adults supporting me. Because you're the pastor's kid.
Yeah.
So like, I was always like the guinea pig, as like everybody wanted to see me succeed. So I had a strong community of adults that was always pushing me. I didn't get the privilege of going out and getting in trouble or nothing, because everybody knew my parents. Williamsburg is a small town. But not that I was out here just wilding. That was really just the groundwork. Fast forward to high school. Up to that point, I was super introverted. If you would have told me hey, you might get paid to stand in front of people and speak and do poetry and stuff, I would have laughed at you because that's not me. I'm really an introvert. But 10th grade English class, we're doing the poetry unit. You gotta write a poem and say it in front of the class. Okay. I write my 2-shot, I actually speak it. I'm hoping the teacher doesn't call on me. She calls on me. I'm like, hey, yo, I'm not really feeling this. She's like, you know what? It's cool. I'll read it for you. She reads it. The class goes crazy. They're like, whoa. They're losing their minds. After the class, she's like, hey, you should write more. You should get into it. You should do more of that. Keep going.
Do you remember that poem?
I do not. I do remember what kind of poem it was. It was a villanelle. We were doing Shakespearean poems, so it was a villanelle. Sheesh, yeah, that was more than 10 years ago. Crazy. From there, she got me into this competition with the NAACP AXO program. It's like, they call it like the Cultural Olympics. It's like 26 different categories you can compete in, everything from engineering, mathematics, to culinary arts, dance, you name it. So I go to the locals, and I win at locals, and then I advanced to nationals in poetry and engineering. Strange combo, I know.
I was about to say,
Strange
a
combo.
poetic engineer. Okay.
To sidebar.
So what, you giving them bars while you fixing shit?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So sidebar. When I first went to college, my plan was I wanted to get my degree in mechanical engineering, and I've always had a dream. I've always wanted to design and build roller coasters. I was like, yo, that's so cool.
Yeah, I seen that video
Somebody gets paid to do that. We set. How much they get paid? Oh, how many figures? It's done. Calculus had other plans. So
feel that though. Feel that. I feel that.
But that was the plan. So poetry and engineering, I make it to nationals, I lose. I get waxed, right? But that was the first place I went and realized what poetry could be. Mm-hmm. I met people that were my age that had been, speaking, spitting, writing,
for years.
Already 4 or 6 years. And I'm in high school. I'm a 10th grader. So I'm like, oh shoot. So I'm like, all right, so that's what it takes. I do the same program again the next year. And each year, nationals in a different city. So first year it was in Orlando. The next year it was in Vegas. I go to Vegas. I'm like, oh, this is cool. First time out west. I'm feeling myself, I lose again.
I just knew you was going to say you won.
Oh, no. I lost. I'm a 2-time national loser. All right?
What?
In 2 different categories, all right? But, first off, going there, I saw what poetry could be. I saw what excellence looked like. All the kids that were there were people that were my age, people that looked like me, people from some of the same backgrounds as me. The community that I met there, it was so different, Of course, it was through the NAACP, so what they did was they had different youth chapters. It was like over 400 youth chapters from around the nation. Everybody was represented. So that was the beginning of that. Fast forward again.
Quick question before you go any further.
Sure.
How did you compete in engineering in those categories?
Okay.
You built a roller coaster?
So, the first year, yes, I built a roller coaster. And then made a 3D rendition of it in a program called No Limits. So I designed everything, did the math, and did like a 3D scale model of it. The second year, I made a robot. I programmed it, designed it, and it was supposed to be like, imagine if you had somebody that's disabled, they can't reach something. Imagine if you had like a robot assistant in the home. That was the idea.
That's dope.
Yeah.
The judges didn't think so. But you know what? People were like, yo, that's so dope.
I mean, the concept is amazing. Regardless, the concept is amazing.
It was really cool. So, that was the level. When I tell you, the first year I got there was a dude next to me. He got third. He had remodeled a Ford engine, right? And made it more...
And he got third?
He got third. And he made it more fuel efficient. He had the numbers to back up how his remodeling was actually more fuel efficient and had a little less wear and tear on the engine. I'm like, how you do that?
In the 11th grade.
In high school. I don't remember what grade he was in. He was in high school. Another dude, he made a people mover, almost like a Segway. So he made the base for it and programmed it and everything. I was like, but that was the level of excellence that I'm talking about.
Right.
Everybody in there was top of the line. Everybody in there is probably college grads. Everybody in there is going somewhere, doing something. It really but it felt good to be in the room because I'm like, I'm going somewhere. I'm doing something. Yeah, and I think that was awesome. So being from Williamsburg, I was the only male to go from the city of Williamsburg both years in a row.
Well, that's great. Either way.
So
win, lose, or draw. That's impeccable.
And that was something I tried to keep in my mind. Like, you're representing your city, and you're the only male to do it 2 years in a row. Right? You've been holding it down. So on top of that, fast forward again, I go to college. I went to Liberty University. I go there fall 2015. For those who don't know, Liberty University is a very conservative campus, Southern Baptist campus. I go there. I heard it's a Christian college. My version of Christian is Kirk Franklin, Mary, Donnie McClurkin, Fred Hammond. I'm thinking gospel Christian. It's a totally different world out there. And I'm like, oh.
What do you mean by that?
Ooh, what do I mean by that? Okay. So you have how you have the separations of like black church and white church, like culturally speaking. In this case, it's not even like white church. It's more or less conservative, being like they're more politically motivated than spiritually motivated. So they use their political agendas, or they'll use more or less the Christian doctrine to say, hey, if you don't vote for this, you're not a Christian. I've seen them do it a lot of times. And
did you stay and graduate from there?
I did because, well, for one thing, I found some family there. There was, there's a small contingent of like black students there, and we became tight knit. Like, we held each other down. 1, 2, the first 2 years you're there, instead of having your liberal arts schools, like where they teach like worldview classes and your typical gen ed classes, you go there, they're teaching biblical worldview. They're teaching New Testament and Old Testament. Classes that don't hold credential weight unless you're going into a divinity major. So you can't really transfer those credits to another school because it's like, what you gonna do with...
They done boxed you in.
They kind of box students in like that. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm already here, so need I remind you, during that time, I first get there, this is fall 2015, we're going into the 2016 election. So this is where everything is starting to heat up like crazy. I mentioned Liberty also because when I got there, somebody had heard, like, there's this group on the campus called Bridging the Gap Urban Ministries. They heard about the fact that I did poetry in high school, did some things. They were like, oh, so you should join our ministry. We spread the gospel through the performing arts. I'm like, all right. I still didn't see poetry as like a thing that I did. It was just something that happened.
Right.
So they were like, all right, so we got this performance coming up in 2 weeks. We need you to do 2 pieces on the steps of the main building. I didn't have 2 spoken word pieces, but they threw me out there. I jumped out there, wrote a second piece. People were like, oh, that's crazy. Started getting invited to open mics, and that was kind of the beginning of Atlas, as you say it. Where
did you come up with that name then?
Well, that ministry, they have like an intake process. After the intake process, they give you a name, as you'd say. During that time, during the process, they do it almost like a fraternity sorority.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of cross with people.
Yeah.
Right. So the line that I crossed with, they were like, you were kind of the anchor and the leader of that line. You held up this line, so they called me Atlas.
Oh, okay.
And it kind of just stuck. So I'm like, all right, cool, say it.
Well, at least you got a cool name.
It'd be a shame. They not because I love them. Because there were times I would ask them. There were times when they would give people roasted names. They would give people names like, it's like, oh, they call them they call them Hairline because his hairline was jacked up. No.
They did that. What would you have done with that?
I wouldn't have called myself. I'm like, nah, y'all can, nah. But it was all family. It was all love. You know what I'm saying? So, but that was the beginning of the poetry side of it. But it was interesting learning spoken word on a campus that barely affirms you as a person at times. So, yeah.
That's how the world is. So it kind of prepared you for outside.
It did.
You know?
It did.
Especially in the last couple of years.
Who you talking about, man? Like, so I was there. So come to find out, Liberty was one of the main seats of power that got Donald Trump, like, elected. Like when I say he came there on Martin Luther King Day and spoke in front of the campus.
On Martin Luther King Day. Okay.
I'm not making this up. So like when I say like liberty, when I say the conservative camp, I'm talking about like it's like one of the main hubs of conservative thought.
But you don't have to tell people who you vote for. So politically, how did that affect you?
It was interesting because I got a chance to hear what they really thought. Because on one hand, it's like you see what is all put in the media, and I think we all agree that the media doesn't always tell the full story.
Right.
I'm like, all right, well, I'm forced to be here because I couldn't. That's the other thing. They have this thing called convocation. When I was there, it was 3 times a week. You get 1 skip a semester. You can't, like, once you come into the...
Ooh, that's intense.
Yeah. After that skip, it's $10 a skip. There were people that owed the school like $200. It was crazy. But 3 times a week, you gotta be in there. And a lot of times, at first, it was treated like a chapel service. Like, before the election, they had some really dope people come in. Like, they had Steve Forbes come in. They had the old coach of... Coach Beamer from Virginia Tech. Michael Vick came in there. Kirk Cousins came in there. They'd have like athletes, motivational speakers, billionaires.
So it kind of made you want to go.
It was encouraging.
Yeah.
It was cool.
And then they dropped Donald Trump on you on Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh, hold on. They built up to Donald Trump. So, listen, okay, so toward the end, they started having like nothing but like conservative politicians, conservative speakers come in and pretty much almost brainwash the kids saying like, if you don't vote this way, God don't love you, essentially, or you ain't a Christian, or the Bible says this, which really means vote for us, which is, I'm not making this up. This is wild. It was wild. So fast forward to that. So Donald Trump comes. And again, it's part of convocation. We can't not be there. We are forced to be there. So I'm there, and me and my other 2 friends, we're the only black people in the entire like section.
Oh God!
It was crazy. I was there when he said the whole 2 Corinthians thing. I was in the room. It was there. It was wild. And it kind of went downhill from there. Like after him, let's see who else came through that. Candace Owens was there. Dinesh D'Souza was there. Donald Trump Jr. came through there. Mike Pence spoke at a graduation. I've heard some stuff, but being in there, I got to hear what they really thought, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm bugging. Maybe they get up. Maybe different parts of the media splicing it up and putting together a narrative. Nothing they haven't done before. Nah, this is the first time I looked. I'm like, nah.
Said, nah.
This is the first time I looked. I'm like, oh nah.
The media got it right.
They got it right. They're actually accurate. Because I'm like, I've heard these people with my own ears, and liberty is such an echo chamber. You know, people get in their echo chamber and they get comfortable. There was some crazy things said from that stage, and it wasn't just the fact that they were saying it. It was the fact that the school, as a Christian organization, or as a proclaimed Christian organization, said nothing to say, nah, this ain't it. Like, hey, whoa, I'm gonna need you to dial it back a little bit. Nah,
they probably got money or clout or something off of that, you know.
We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. But
that's the truth.
But that's the truth, though. That's the truth.
That's the truth.
But I mention all that because it really, I didn't realize how much it shaped my identity. Like, as a black believer, and being in spaces that say they believe the same thing you do, but treat you like you're the problem to be solved. That was something that was really interesting. I spent more time in the city of Lynchburg than I did on campus at Liberty. There's an organization called the Listening Incorporated. That's really where I kind of cut my teeth as like a spoken word artist, as just somebody that serves in the community. They bought a program there called the Freedom School program. To give an idea of the Freedom School, it started in 1964. The Listening Incorporated, nonprofit out in Lynchburg, they specialize in using arts as a form of mentorship, which I was like, oh, that's dope. All right, cool. They started in like 2012. I got there, so it's like fall 2015. Met the founder, and at the time the director, Nick George, Mr. Nick George, Nicholas George. That man is different. In the city of Lynchburg, nobody was really supporting like people talked about stuff, but nobody was really doing stuff. He was one of the main people to get up and actually do it. He was having like regular open mic signature sessions, and using art. Really, that was the first time I saw art used as community engagement. It became the precursor for an organization I run now called Slam Connection. Different thing.
Okay.
But
we gotta come back to that one.
we gonna put a pin in that.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I saw art be effective outside of just a stage, or art effective outside of just the gallery or whatever. I was like, oh, okay. So, by the way, Lynchburg, the art scene in Lynchburg is pretty strong. Don't let it fool you, man. Like, there's some dope artists out there, like rappers, singers, even poets. Like, the Listening Incorporated became such a main part of the art scene that it was really pushing it forward and helping people not just get discovered, but really building the community.
Are they still operating?
Yes, they are still operating. Nick George is no longer the director. He passed it off. But they're still doing amazing things out there. Yeah, it was an amazing opportunity. So they brought this program in called the Freedom School. The Freedom School started in 1964. Started with the Children's March. And it was really created because at the time, black people had to take literacy tests to vote, right? They weren't allowed to vote. So what they did was they made like these summer intensives. So it's like, hey, we're going to make sure we raise the literacy levels, raise the reading levels. So to make sure everybody has what it takes to take these literacy tests until we can change the law. Because right now, this is the hurdle we got to get over. But until we move this hurdle out the way, we're going to make sure everybody has what they need. So it will literally be college students coming down, educating students, kids, even adults, so they can have the tools they need. They were college students. They were coming down to the South too. Of course, people in the South ain't like the fact that these college kids coming down and talking to the black people. There were college kids that were getting killed, right? Because they were coming down and doing a service. So you have big names like Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, people that really championed this movement. Out of the Children's March came the Million Man March. That was a precursor for that. Martin Luther King gives his famous I Have a Dream speech. So to be a part of the Freedom School is to be a part of the ongoing move for civil rights. So Nick George, The Listening, they bring the program to Lynchburg. Nobody had ever seen it before. As it is now, over 1 million kids nationwide have been affected by this program. It's a 6-week, mostly like, I call it an intensive. There's no homework, right? We don't give kids homework. We focus more on the child than the information we give the child, if that makes sense. So each week we read a book. But all of the books, the subject matter is about social justice in some form of shape, or it's about somebody else's perspective. Like there's one of the books is, depending on what grade level you're on, one of the books is like a comic book. John Lewis's comic book. March, that's what it's called. It was all about like, oh, this was his process in becoming a symbol for social justice. Right. This is some of the things he dealt with back in the day. One of the books, La Línea, or The Line, talking about an immigrant, you know what I'm saying, talking about an immigrant on the from Mexico coming into the United States, and what it was like crossing the border or crossing the line. And then all the questions that we ask in our curriculum are meant to make the kids think. But the classes, they're only like an hour long. It's meant to flip the entire idea of traditional school on its head. And it's really amazing.
A lot of people are into flipping the idea of traditional school on its head. Especially with the way our school systems are now.
Talk about that. Like, that was different. Because the first year I was part of the Freedom School in years 2019. I would have been 2020, but COVID had other plans. 2021, I came back as a site coordinator. The first year I was servant leader intern or teacher. Let's see. So we get the program going. The first year, it's new to the community. We're the only all middle school site in the nation. Because middle school is such a hard demographic to reach. So most sites either go like...
Most critical too. Yeah,
they're super critical. Super critical. You got one time and they will not forget you.
Yeah.
So most sites, they go K through 5, or they go K through 5 to middle school, or they go middle school to high school. There's no other sites that was going just middle school. But we needed that because in that city, that was the most unreached demographic. We get in there, man, so each day, we don't just start off going to class. We have like a hype session called Harambe, right? Coming together, right? And there's like a whole thing. It's loud. We got energy. You get up. So the first day, they're looking at us like, yo, these people are crazy. Like,
Right.
They are wild. But nah, like by the end of the summer, there's like a whole thing called like the motivational song. And the whole chorus of the song is like, there's something inside so strong. There's like a whole choreography and everything.
I was gonna watch you do it though. I thought you was about to break it.
Right. But it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. I'm so serious. Like, but like by the end of the summer, like even the most hardened kids, I'm like, yo,
Okay.
do it. But like the whole first part of the day, we spend time motivating them. It's like, no, you can do this.
You feeding them.
Exactly. And the specific kids that we had, they were the kids that nobody else wanted. They were the kids that had bad grades, kids that already had rap sheets, kids that were already getting in trouble, kids that
Yeah, I had y'all work cut out.
we had our work cut out for us. These were the bad kids, right? And it just so happened that a lot of them were darker skinned. A lot of them looked like us. A lot of them were the stereotypes, as you'd say.
We need that in Richmond. I'm sorry. I know I'm not gonna talk, but we need that in Richmond.
Hey man, hey, hold on.
He coming. He coming on down the road.
But like, so that was like the whole thing. So by the time we got to the end of the summer, they had bought into the program, right? And that was year one. So by the time we got to, technically it would have been year 3, but year 2 and 21, it was already established. We had built a rapport with parents, with the schools, with the city. And yeah, it was an amazing program.
So after middle school, do they stop or do they like still have the opportunity to be a part of this?
They can. For that, each site kind of runs differently. Mm-hmm. Like for our site, we was at Randolph College, right? Some sites that at the correctional facilities, so it matters on what site you run. Right. For us, we had some kids that would kind of come back, kind of swing through as alumni. For us, it was strictly middle school. So we didn't have like a high school side because we didn't have the staff for it. It just matters on your site, matters on how much money you can raise, matters on who's willing to get down and help you do the work. But yeah, like amazing program. It has results, has roots. Even to this day, like before we eat, we had to go through like a 10-day training in Tennessee. So Alex Haley's farm, that's where they have the training at, like out there somewhere close to Knoxville. I think it's close to Knoxville. So, but nonetheless, we out there in Tennessee. Big farm, people from all over the country, like everywhere. Like, it was so dope because it's all people like us.
Right.
Mostly college. It was mostly college age kids. You saw just about every fraternity, sorority, every D9 fraternity, sorority represented. Every background, every racial or ethnic background was represented. People of different genders, whoever, like, 'cause everybody was motivated by the same cause. Let's see, who else came through to our training? Sean King was there. Ruby Bridges came through and spoke with us, like, because the roots is heavy.
That's historic.
Who's it? I think the person that was running, I don't know if she's running it now, but at the time, Miriam Wright Edelman, she was running it. Like, it's insane, bro. It's insane. Like, now, side note, North Carolina, Ohio, Minnesota, their Freedom School program, they have a couple different sites across their states. Man, when I say people was beefing state to state, it was fun beef, but it was beef. The hype session before the hype session, before the motivational song, any of that in the morning. So they take us through Harambe each morning. Man, before the morning even got started, all you hear is Ohio, Ohio, oh yeah, Minnesota. They was going crazy in there. At the time, VA, it was Lynchburg and Norfolk. That was the only Freedom School. So we were just sitting there like, oh shoot, y'all in here kind of deep. Y'all in here kind of dang. Yeah, like it was like, but it's a whole thing. It's one of the most accepting spaces I've been in. I say all that to say, it was the first time I seen the intersection between art and actual community action. Because a lot of artists, just want to be artists. They just want to be somebody that's good at what they do and put on a pedestal.
Right.
In community action, they're looking for new ways to engage.
Right.
But that was one of the first times I seen it with my own eyes and with my own hands. Like, oh, this is how you intersect the two. But yeah, middle schoolers, they're tough. But once they trust you, you good. So,
Right.
So that was really the precursor for a lot of things I'm doing now. I finally graduated Liberty. I made it out. Give us a spree.
Hallelujah.
I made it out.
But how hard was it being at Liberty, being black, being a young man,
Oh boy.
and not conforming to what the narrative they were trying to push down your throat?
Okay.
Because, you know, like, 18, you're pretty impressionable. Leaving high school, going to college, you're trying to figure out who you are in that moment. So, in the midst of trying to figure out who you are already, facing the battles of the world outside of college, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Facing the battles of going to college, being away from your parents.
Right.
Then somebody is telling you, this is who you should be.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of
Right.
things to juggle.
Of course. Yeah. Going to Liberty made me like lock in on my faith, because it's one thing to know God for yourself. It is another thing to listen to what somebody else says God said you should be. You know, a lot of kids go there. A lot of the population at that time, can't speak for now, but at that time, there was a lot of homeschool kids that would go there. There was a lot of kids. There was a high level of LGBTQ kids that were at the school, not by choice. Somebody somewhere found out that they were gay. The pastor found out they were gay.
This was a punishment for them. And
Go to school and pray the gay away.
Mm.
It's like, we gonna send you to Liberty or we not paying for college. It was, they had a thing there called gay conversion therapy.
Ooh, I heard about that, but I didn't know it was that close.
It's real. The horror stories I have heard from students, either gay students or friends of gay students, like, it's wild. To think it comes from a Christian camp. This is a campus that professes the name of Jesus Christ, right?
So I wonder if anybody ever spoke out about all the things that they did.
Oh, you can find podcasts about it, because it started getting out of hand, especially when at the time Jerry Falwell Jr. was like pushing a lot of the conservative like agenda. They were already a conservative school, even down to the roots of it. When the school was first started, it was meant to be a political seat of power, because at the time, Southern Baptists were losing the battle against segregation. Right, the school started in 1971. Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, that's 1965. That's 68. 71, the school started. That's when the hot button issue then was becoming abortion. That's one of the reasons why conservatives push so hard for abortion or against abortion and stuff like that. So when the school was started, there's even like a small academy attached to it, LCA, Liberty Christian Academy. Private school, real nice. It was created because schools in Lynchburg were integrating. Martin Luther King came to E.C. Glass High School. I got a chance to go there. They have like a whole shrine and like a wall like showing like, hey, this is what happened when he came here. He came there during the Civil Rights Movement. Harlem Renaissance poet Ann Spencer. She used to live in the city, right? So people were coming through. You know, people were there. But the city was starting to integrate. And it was so staunchly segregationist that there was a time when all the pools in the city filled their pools with concrete because they didn't want white kids swimming with black kids. There was only one place called Camp Kumbaya. They were the only place that kept their pool open. That was the nature of the city. It's
like a footprint of history.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Very much, very much. So essentially what happens is LCA is built because there was a lot of white parents that didn't want their kids going to school with black kids, or they didn't believe that it was biblically sound to be integrated. So they made their Christian academy for white kids.
I just think it's funny how people take parts of the Bible and
don't get me started. Don't get me started.
To fit their narrative. I just think that's amazing to me.
don't get me started, man. Like,
say judge, you be judged.
Mm-hmm.
You segregating is judging.
and I think I would even go to the further extent of saying to segregate is to have a God complex.
Right.
You know, at what point do you think like that I'm so much better than you that you don't deserve to breathe my air?
Right.
As if it's your air.
Right.
Like I think it even.
And they built the whole school based on that.
They built the whole school. They won't say it, but if you look at the original intent of why the school was built, it's like, oh, y'all are serious. But Liberty University was built to be a political seat of power. So fast forward to that, when I realized what was going on and how they were pushing Donald Trump and all of his camp and stuff like that, and why they were able to come in here and do all the things they were doing, I'm like, oh, this was part of the plan. Got you. And they did it all in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. So I think like
that's amazing.
To get back to your question of like being a black man on that campus, it made me get closer to God because I had to. Because I had like somebody said something crazy. They were like, "You're trying to love people that claim to love," which I'm like, got you. I understand now. So
that's a life lesson too, though. For real.
It is.
You learned a lot of stuff in college that you could that came like problems that came before your time.
Yeah.
That some people don't get to directly face. But you got to face it and live it for 4 years.
I got to be in the eye of the hurricane for 4 years. Cause when I say like all the political stuff that was happening, the amount of times Liberty was popping up in the news, and it didn't help that Jerry Falwell Jr. at the time. I don't know if you heard about the whole pool boy scandal. Go on Hulu, look up. I forget what the name of the documentary is, but essentially, him and his wife. Allegedly, I'm gonna just put it that way. Allegedly, him and his wife were vacationing down in Miami or whatever, as they do. There's this pool boy that comes up, pool attendant at the super fancy resort or whatever. Essentially, the wife was like would take the pool boy. They would like sleep together or whatever, and Jerry Falwell would be in the room. And he'd be like, it's like he'd be watching the whole thing go on. It was wild. It's some stuff. You got to see the documentary. And it when it all came out, of course, it messed up whatever reputation the school had. It was not good. But again, people like one thing I had to learn as a believer is like at the end of the day, sure you can love your country, you can believe that your country can do better, but A, this country was built by people. And B, this country is not a God.
And people are not perfect.
And people are not perfect. All right? And there's no American flag in heaven.
Right.
Like, that was some things I had to, those were a couple lessons I had to learn. Like, just going there. Because I'm like, I'm watching this, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Okay.
So what was your major?
Originally, mechanical engineering. Right. Like I said, calculus said no. Yeah. Calculus was disrespectful. But
it is.
But but my advisor was like, you know, a lot of engineers, if they don't make it in engineering, a lot of them go to graphic design. You're using the same brain function, but just in a different way. You're still solving a problem just visually instead of mathematically or analytically. I'm like, all right, cool. I transferred to graphic design, and yeah, there it is.
So you're a graphic designer now.
That is what I do.
Okay, so, awesome.
Graphic designer, some photography, do some video work, just different skills I picked up, and it all helped. God is good.
It's all art too.
It's all art. It's all art.
Because that means you can create videos for your poetry, and you know. Do you think there is a difference between being a spoken word artist and a poet?
It can be. It can be. If it's like you have your page poets, right? You have your spoken word artists, then you have your slam poets.
Page poets.
So your page poets, it's I'm writing to be read, right? There are poets that I know that they only write like poetry like that you'd read in a book. They only write poetry that would only be like poetry that are only meant to be read, only meant for the eyes, not exactly for the ears. Then you have spoken word, which is poetry meant to be spoken out, poetry meant to be proclaimed, poetry meant to be performed. Then you have slam, which is spoken word in a competition format. So they overlap a lot, but there is differences. It matters on who your audience is and your setting. So, yes. Yes. I guess.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you what was slam poetry.
Oh, let me get into that. Slam.
Because you say you had a program.
Yes. Okay. Slam poetry. At its root, it's spoken word. But it's spoken word specifically in a more organized competition format. So, slam poetry, you have traditional slam poetry competition, 3 rounds, right? Each round you get 3 minutes with a 10-second grace period, right? You have a panel of 5 judges. Judges give you a score from 0 being the worst thing they've ever heard to 10, which is Maya Angelou who, Langston Hughes who, 0 to 10. You can get a decimal place, so you can score a 9.3. You can score an 8.2, right? What else am I missing? You can't use props or music or anything else outside of you and the words. So, like, if I say something, something, pocket, and put my hand in my pocket, that's a prop. So you can't use anything else that nobody else or none of the other poets don't have access to. So if there's a mic, you can say something, something, mic stand, something, something. Everybody has access to the mic. You can say...
So are you coming up with this one on the spot?
No, these are, a lot of these are, no. You can.
I was like,
that has,
freestyle too.
Apparently that has happened in the past. There are poets that are freestyle perfect scores. I don't recommend it, but you can. But the idea is that you go into a spoken word, you go into a slam competition with, I'd say, safety, 4 to 5 pieces, right? And you change them out like tires. Now, you have bout draw. So say you have 12 poets, everybody, each slam scene kind of has a different way of how they pick who goes first and how the rounds go. This is just the most common format that I've seen. So you have your 12 poets, you decide who goes first, but before that first poet goes, you have a sack poet or a sacrificial poet. What a lot of hosts say is like, are we ready to start a poetry slam? Yeah, no, first there must be blood. Oh. So they have a sacrificial poet or a calibration poet. They perform as if they're in the competition.
But they're not.
But they're not in the competition. They're there to whet the palate of the judges, to let the judges kind of get a bar or a gauge for what's going on.
So they gotta be like top notch.
Typically, you want a sack poet that is on the skill level of the rest of the poets.
That sounds a lot like our open mic.
There you go.
Yeah.
So what happens is sack poet goes up, and depending on how they score, depending on what they talk about, the next poet goes up, and that'll influence kind of like the rest of the round. Because say if everybody's talking about black stuff the whole round, then in that scoring well, your poem is going to be about black stuff. But you want to come at it from a different angle, right? You want to. That's why it's so important to really diversify what you write about and how you write about it. You want to come at it from a different angle than the person before you. All right. If they're talking about school shootings, how are you going to talk about school shootings in a different way, or are you going to change the subject? So it's really less about the poetry and more about controlling the room. You know, how can you captivate the room? That's why when he was talking about like open mic and how you can captivate the room, slam poets are really good at that, because the higher you go, the more it's about performance and your ability. It's less about like rhyming and bars and punches, and more about I got you.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really the basics of it, and it's really fun once you get into it.
It sounds interesting. I'm gonna have to go to one.
Go listen. Writers Den, great opportunity. Virginia's a strong slam state. All right, you got Verb Benders. I was part of the Verb Benders this past year. We finished 3rd in the nation at the Southern Fried Poetry Slam. Highest we've ever done. It's teams are typically 5-man teams. You do 2 like team pieces and stuff. Let's see, Virginia Strong Slam State. You got Verb Bender 757. You got Slam Connection, my organization. We're going to be starting a slam team in 2025. So we're going to be sending the team to Southern Fried, all that good stuff. But we're about to have our Grand Slam. The first ever Historic Triangle Grand Slam in February. More on that later. More on that later.
You like
Richmond.
plugging nuggets, don't you?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, you can't show all your cards
I like it.
at once. You can't. Hey, you gotta go piece by piece. Nah. Let's see. Richmond's always been strong in the slam scene. You got Writers Den. Slam Richmond has kind of come back this year. Rich Inc. is still around. They're holding more exhibitions. Yeah, Richmond has always been strong.
So it's almost like a rap battle for poets.
Yeah.
That's how I view that. Yeah. So what is Crosswalk Youth?
Ooh, let me tell you about Crosswalk
He's
Youth.
excited.
Bro, okay, so you seen all the videos on, okay. Crosswalk Youth.
Is that your baby?
No, that is not my, so Crosswalk is my church.
Okay.
Crosswalk is one church, 3 locations, 2 of which are in Williamsburg, and then there's one in Newport News.
Okay.
They've been around for 20, I think this is year 22, 23. Pastor Mark and Pastor Pam Morrow, they amazing pastors, really have a vision, really led by God, amazing church. Their son, they have like 10 kids, all right? All of them work in ministry, all of them are amazing people, right? One of their sons, Landon Morrow, he's leading the youth like ministry, right? Head of the he's like executive pastor, but then like lead youth pastor. It's like a couple different positions, but amazing dude. Him and his wife Katie, they run Crosswalk Youth. Crosswalk Youth is really proof that if you give kids space, they will fill it. We have the blessing of having great facilities, having just access to great materials and just things that a lot of other people don't have access to. So we utilize everything. So every Tuesday night, every other Tuesday night, we have an everyone night. So we have everybody come through. It's almost like 100 kids every Tuesday. Easy. We have more kids in our every other Tuesday night meeting than some churches have in their full congregations. It's crazy. And the whole service is led by the kids. The worship, led by the kids. The sound booth, the cameras, all the kids. The only thing that is not the kids is the actual teaching of the word, right? And then after we have like maybe a 30-minute like sermon, then we break off into our small groups. So I'm a small group leader, or I'm a youth leader. Yes, I am a youth leader. I'm a youth leader with Crosswalk Youth. Proud to call it home, man. Those kids are great and they're hungry. These kids are growing up in a wild time, and they're looking for identity. They're looking for answers, and they're going straight to the word to get those answers. And
do you think it's harder as a kid growing up now than what it was when we came up?
I think
because you're a little younger than me, but still.
I think generations before, say World War II into the baby boom generation, they were handed a breaking world. The next generation, kind of Gen X, was handed a broken world. The generation after that, my generation, going into the 90s, late mid 90s, early 2000s, we were handed a completely broken world. The next generation was handed a shattered world. It was in complete pieces and disarray.
And that's the generation we're in now.
This generation we in now is handed a world that's dang near unrepairable. And I say that in the sense of, we're seeing now more than ever that systems that were put in place years ago were never really meant to work.
Right.
It's not that they're broken. They're functioning just as intended.
Right.
It's just they weren't built with you and me in mind.
Right.
They weren't built with, and systems that's like, let's talk how the housing market actually works.
Right.
And we watched it fall apart. For years, for generations, the dream was go get buy a house, right? Marry the girl, have the kids and have, the dog and everything. American dream, right? That has become, it is the most unattainable it's been in generations. And it's not because people aren't working hard, right? This is the most educated generation. This is the most informed generation we've ever had, right? And this is the generation with the access to more resources than just about every generation combined. And getting a 1-bedroom apartment is the hardest it's ever been.
Who you tell?
Come on now. I just moved into mine, man. it's harder than it's ever been to be a citizen now than it ever has been. So that's why a lot of kids now, they lose hope. That's why you see problems with like respect for authority, because this is the generation that watch authority have no respect for the rest of the world. Actively, in front of everybody. We seen what our adult counterparts, we seen who they really are.
Right.
It's you can't just tell kids nowadays, listen to me, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
You can't.
That's the old school way.
You can't. Back in the day, it was a survival tactic, especially amongst like the black community, right? It was, if you don't do what I say, they gonna get you. Right? You need to do what I say because I'm trying to keep you alive. Okay, cool. It was a different world back then. Nowadays, it's like, but can I trust you?
Right.
You know, I'm not saying that that's all of it blanket, but a lot of it, this is the most skeptical generation there's ever been.
Yeah.
This generation,
questioning it.
This generation is a post 9/11, post COVID, right? Post 2016 and 2020 election, post January 6th generation, right?
Mo 3 is considered one of the most.
Oh my God. Excuse me.
That too. Listen. This generation has grown. I have so much. I have a heart for this generation. My heart goes out to kids like born a little after me and born in this current time, because I'm like, y'all are growing up in a time when the systems and different things that were put in place so you can have a good life are crumbling or have completely crumbled. Right. And people treat you like you're the nuisance. So how that pertains to crosswalk youth, right? I have a heart for kids, man. I've always worked with kids, whether it was Freedom School, even back before then. My mom ran a summer camp through our church, and that was awesome. Loved working with the kids. Have a heart for kids. So I joined. I've been a youth leader for about 2 years. It is by far the most effective and one of the biggest youth ministries in the region. I've never seen, like, grown up in the church, been around different churches, I've never seen a youth ministry like this, where the adults buy in just as much as the kids do, and vice versa.
Right.
And the space really is for the kids,
Right.
you know, and the leadership team goes out of their way to make sure that those kids are good, you know. I've never seen anything like that.
You consider yourself a mentor as well?
Yeah.
Why you say it like that?
I don't know, because
Like, you have to think about it for a second.
you don't think about it. You just do.
Right.
You just do. And then by the time you realize it, it's like, oh, I'm a mentor. Oh, I'm the person that mentored me. I'm that person now. The cycle is complete.
Right.
So, yeah.
And that's needed, though. That's needed, especially with our young men. So how do you handle adversity?
You take it head on. You know, the way I see it is like adversity is part of life. You know, as a believer, the book of Ecclesiastes tells us that there's a time for laughter, there's a time for sadness, there's a time for peace, and a time for war. For everything, there's a season. That is something I live by. You know, the one thing I keep in mind though is that when I'm going through an adverse time, know that not only is God on my side, right? But no, God is just as good in the good times as he is in the bad times. And just because, even if he doesn't just take me out of this thing immediately, that doesn't mean that he's any less good than he was yesterday. You know, a lot of people, they go through bad times and be like, yo, why do bad things always happen to good people? You know, why it's always got to be, like, why is it always happening to me? Which is the real question. Which I'm like, you know, if God got rid of all the evil in the world, he'd have to get rid of us too. You know? So be careful what you wish for.
Right.
You know? At the end of the day, like, God is still good. He still woke me up this morning. I'm still moving. You know, I'm still walking in his will. You know? And at the end of the day, every path, like, who was it? Bishop T.D. Jakes. He was talking to some dude. I think the dude was being like ordained as a pastor or something like that. He said something that stuck with me. This is video I seen. He was like, you know, greatness is supposed to hurt. Right. You know, greatness is supposed to be uncomfortable.
Well, anything given easy ain't worth having anyway.
Exactly.
And I think also the new thing is, even with the older generation, is they want the ready-made solution to a lot of things that you have to work through. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's also a takeaway when it comes down to a lot of stuff where you're like, okay, it's a process.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's hard not to tap into that, where it's like when life is hard and you're like, I just want a solution.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But the solution takes time and work. But I grew up in the church too.
Yeah.
My mom was not a pastor. She was a minister.
Come on.
But to me, it's the same. Like, we was in church 7 days a week. You know what I'm saying? So, what pressures did you have to overcome being a PK? Because that's a lot of pressure. Because people look at pastors as if they're perfect.
Yeah.
And they expect the kids to be perfect too. So.
Okay. Listen, it's not. It matters on where you're a PK, and everybody has different pressures. Like, for me, being a black male in Williamsburg, Virginia, who is the son of black pastors in Williamsburg, Virginia, no family, no real connections when we first started out. Like, a lot of, like, it's not really said at first. A lot of times it's felt. And it's not always from the people in your immediate circle, but rather people that just kind of orbit, right? It's almost as if they're waiting for you to fall on your face. Not to look at you, but to take you and put you back in the face of your parents.
Right.
Because your parents said something they didn't like, or your parents, they stand for something that they don't agree with or whatever. And they're looking at you, waiting for you to be nothing more than evidence that your parents don't know what they're talking about. You know, or the flip side of that is, no matter how good you do, you're just a trophy to your parents. That is a mindset I had to break. You know, being a pastor's kid, it meant that was being a pastor's kid is the hardest I've ever had to fight for my own identity.
Right.
You know, because you don't
had to go through a lot of identity challenges though. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
it. That's real. But all that means is that one thing I realized is, like, if the attack on my identity, from wherever angle it came from, most of my struggles were that. I'm like, then that means, then I ask God, well, then who am I? Who am I supposed to be to where every attack is against my identity?
Do you have conversations with your parents about about those challenges, like especially with like college and stuff?
They're more nuanced. My mom and dad, they can be kind of old school. I love them to death, but they can be kind of old school.
But it's understandable. It's the time they grew up in.
And honestly, they did their best. Again, they moved out here, no family, no connections. Yeah. Like,
that's brave.
That's brave. Like as I got older and realized like how crazy what they did was, I'm like, you know what? Y'all follow God and y'all did what y'all supposed to do. They're starting to realize, especially now as I'm an adult, and especially as you get to adult, and I'm in that phase where I'm looking forward in my life. I'm like, 7 to 10 years from now, I'm gonna probably be married and possibly be a father. You know, how do I not pass on things to my kids? How do I not give my kids baggage? I want to give my kids a legacy. I don't want to give them trauma. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How do I not do that? Same thing with my future wife. You know, like how do our relationship is only going to be as good as we're prepared for. Right. You know, like you can prepare. You're not going to be perfect, but I mean, I want that to be a healthy space, and I don't want to bring in stuff from 15 years ago. You know,
that's dope, because some people our age and older, don't know that the things you went through affect your now. They think because they went through it, they got through it, and they came on the other side that it's over. Mm-hmm. But it's not. You gotta learn how to unpack that stuff, and you know what I'm saying?
It's real. It's real. So like, a lot of those conversations with my parents are more nuanced, because our church that we had, it shut down in 2018. So, and it was a tough time because our family, that was our church, that was our home.
Yeah.
Again, we didn't have family up here. That church was our extended family.
Right.
Like when my mom and dad, they traveled all over the world, missions trips, whatever. When they was traveling along the world, doing the Lord's work and doing what they were called to do, it was these people in the church that was cooking meals for us, making sure we got the football and track practice. They was coming to graduations and birthday parties and Christmas, and they were the ones that was looking out for us. That they was our aunts and uncles, for all intents and purposes. So to lose that was whoa. But it put a lot of things into perspective as to like who is our family really outside of the confines of this church.
Right.
And it's taking some time, it's taking a lot of effort, a lot of prayer. But those conversations are happening. And they're realizing that. I'm realizing that. And so, yeah.
That's dope. So, do you view yourself as a public speaker?
I'm starting to. Like, as much...
I see it.
I've been writing and performing for... We're going into year 9 in 2024. Year 9. I saw myself spoken word poet, slam poet, public speaker. Huh. You know?
I mean, because the speech that I saw at the high school graduation was that of a professional speaker.
Yeah. So,
you know, I mean, you had the dramatic pauses. You had the, you know, I was like, look at him.
Yeah, fact. But the funny, again, back to the whole pressure of the pastor's kid thing. The minute you become public speaker, right, all of a sudden it's like, oh, look, he's going to do what his dad did. Because a lot of it, when the church was around, it was assumed that, okay, well, I guess Croy's they're kind of grooming him to take the reins, which is not the case. My dad, being the dope individual he is, you know, he was like, you know what, I don't want to create another me. I want to create a you. All right?
Awesome.
That's what I want you to do.
Awesome.
And I was like, and my mom, she the same way, you know. If that was something I felt called into, they'd be like, all right, cool. Me, I never felt the call to preach. So I never really considered myself public speaker.
Well, I'm glad that they took the pressure off you for that. Because some of us as parents, you know, you see your child, for example, especially with athletes. You see it a lot with athletes. Where you're like, oh, you got a ball in your hand at 2, and you're going to be the next LeBron James or the next Michael Jordan. You know what I'm saying? And we're pushing the narrative when your kid wants to be a lawyer or a doctor or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Create their own path, you know, basically. And instead of allowing kids to create their own creativity, we sometimes push a narrative. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's awesome that they supported you in whatever you wanted to do. Especially with the notions of being a pastor's kid. Because as somebody who went to church with the pastor's kid, and we were the exact same age, you know what I'm saying? I could see some of the struggles that he faced and some of the things he went through that his parents couldn't see because they weren't focused on the pressures that the kids went through. You know what I'm saying? I even had to break it down to my mom. Like, let me tell you what behind the scenes look like, Mom. Because, you know what I'm saying? She was the minister, but we had children that came in that we didn't know. Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And you could see their disposition about us because we always at church. Like, do you think you better? Do you know what I'm saying?
No, right.
Like, it's just crazy. You know?
Oh, man. Like, when I say, like, some of the other kids in at the time, our youth group, they would go hang out with them amongst themselves, but they wouldn't bring me because they were like, oh, well, he might snitch. Which I'm like, now granted, some of the things that they might have been doing, okay. Maybe I shouldn't have been there anyway. But at the same time, it's like, dang, like, that's how y'all feel. Like, it does something to you over time. It's never just one thing. It's just over time, you just realize, like, oh, okay. That's how that goes. Now, on the other side, the hardest part was seeing, like, you go to the conferences and you see the other pastors' kids, whatever, and some of them be wild. Some of them be buck wild.
And those are the ones you hear about.
And those are the ones you hear about. And you just be, like, and the worst part is pastors' kids, we're all amazing actors. We know how to smile. We know how to wave. We know how to, you know, recite the word and stuff like that. But when you get in those behind closed doors and you really hear what some of these kids was really saying, like, some of the things that they was talking about, it's like, oh, y'all really out here in the trenches. I'm like, okay, but me, I was the goody pastor kids. I was such a square. I loved it though. I was, you know, hey kids, stay a square. stay a square, bro. It's not, these streets ain't nothing fun about these streets out here. Like, but yeah, like you hear about stuff that these kids was going through, stuff that they was doing. I was like, oh, they wildin', but you know, like, I was just kind of the goody, and that was kind of like my identity. It's like, oh, it's Croy over there. It's Croy. You know, that's what happened. So
what does leaving your mark look like to you?
Leaving my mark, if you have the ability to change something or a place, you get to a place, and that place is the same when you leave it. There's no evidence of you being there, no evidence of the movement or the growth of you being there, then what was the point? Right. You know, each person has something to give, you know. I think about the parable of the talents. He gave some 5, gave some 2, and gave one 1. You know, some of us are more talented. Some of us have more to give in the proverbial sense. But I'm like, imagine being in a place for years, you know, fighting to be in a place, because no place is easy. Whatever place that may be, whether it be a physical place or a mental place or whatever, imagine being in that place for years, putting in all that effort, and then you finally leave and there's nothing to show for it. You know, I think leaving a mark on a place is proof that not only are you alive and living and, you know, trying and striving, but it means so much more to leave a mark on a place, because it's like, no, like, not only was I here, I didn't just exist in this space, you know, because it's easy to just exist in a place.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I don't know, one of my biggest fears personally is having an inconsequential experience on Earth. You know, coming to Earth, spending my whole life fighting, you know, fighting for my identity and all this stuff, and going broke and going to college and, you know, doing all this stuff that comes with life, and then one day leaving it and having nothing to show for it.
Right.
You know, like, oh yeah, you did this, you worked a job. You know, like, oh yeah, you got an apartment, you got a house. Oh, you got kids, that's cool. That's my biggest fear, you know. I never want that, you know. When one thing I've always asked God for is like, God, I want legacy more than anything. Like, and even if I plant these seeds and I never see them grow, that's what I want, you know. So God gives me seeds.
You think you've already started leaving your mark?
I try not to think about it too much.
Why?
Okay, 2 things. So Slam Connection, right? And then there's this group called the Hope Booth, right? This organization, the Hope Booth. Let's start there. I joined them in 2020, winter 2020, going into 2021, right? Essentially, imagine like we take and repurpose old telephone booths into places where you can receive messages of hope, and possibly like locations where you can get help and access to mental health, like help.
Out of an old telephone booth?
Like,
Okay.
Google this. The Hope Booth. The Hope Booth. I'm so
Okay.
serious. The girl that runs it, her name is Gloria Umana. She's based out of Atlanta. Hope Booth is also based out
So
of
they
Atlanta.
pick up the phone and call somebody?
No, it's not. It's not a phone. It's not a phone. So imagine you see a phone booth, but instead of a phone, it's like a screen, right?
Okay.
And you touch the screen, and it's like a meter that says, "Hey, how are you doing? Like, how hopeful do you feel right now, or how do you feel?" And based on the response you give, there's like a 3-minute like interactive experience that tailors to what you may need in the moment. Then at the end, like within like a 5 to 10 mile radius, like it shows places where you can get the help you may need.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's incredible. I was there day 1 when we first found out about the project, the movement really. Like, it started off kind of as a project, but now it's a whole movement now. I was there day 1, got a chance to, we first debuted it in London, took it on the streets.
Okay.
It was crazy, man. Like, I was also, I am also a co-writer or an experienced writer, so I write the scripts for everything. And I was also one of the first presenters. It was me and one other guy.
And you don't think you've been leaving the mark?
Oh, I'm getting it.
I'm just saying, I don't see how you don't think that at all, you know?
I think the biggest thing is you don't think about it too much. It's like I said, you just do
it.
It's like, you know what? Like Johnny Appleseed, just plant the orchard, right? You don't have to be there to eat the fruit,
Right.
Because the fruit ain't for you,
Right.
Right? You just.
Well, you can plant a couple orchards, okay?
Yeah, like,
I'm just gonna let you know.
I appreciate it.
Kudos to you, because you
Listen.
planted a couple of them.
Listen, I'm following God,
And you
man.
still going.
It's still going,
You know?
still going.
Like,
Like,
Energizer Bunny.
listen, so check this out. So Hope Booth, we debuted in London. We dropped a small like mini documentary, right? Let's see, that was October 2021. March 22, we took the booth on a 30-day 19-city tour across the United States, right? Dropping it off going to different cities, popping up. Hundreds, almost 1,000 people were touched by what we had to say. what was going on. They came through Virginia. I couldn't go on the full tour. They came through Richmond. They came through Lynchburg, and then they went to Atlanta. Went back to Atlanta, of course. So went kind of full circle. We got invited to Trilla Studios. Somebody at Trilla Studios. For those watching, I keep looking at this camera, bro. So for those watching, Trilla Studios, they shoot. So in Atlanta, there's like 3 major studios. You have Tyler Perry, you have Pinewood, and you have Trillith. Trillith is where they shot some of the Marvel movies. Ant-Man, some of the Spider-Man movies there. The Marvel Cinematic Headquarters is at Trillith. To give an idea of how, so they called us. I was like, oh, we outside. All right, so so they called us. We had already had our Atlanta stop. I'm up here in Virginia, so I fly down just for one day to be part of the Trillith stop. And there's like a whole city. There's a whole little like town built for just filming. So everybody there works at the studio.
Oh, okay, dope.
It's dope. So when they're filming like the Marvel movies, you never know. You might see like Chris Evans just casually walk to the coffee shop, or Robert Downey Jr. just stop and get a pizza or whatever, because that's what it was. They're there. I'm like, oh, okay. So okay, cool. The man that owns it, Dan Cathy, owner of Chick-fil-A, right? CEO of Chick-fil-A. Like, he walks by the booth and he hears about it. We're like, yo, we gotta come and try it. He was like kind of doing his rounds, doing his thing. He never tried out the booth, but I was like, oh, shoot. I had never seen a billionaire before.
He looked like us, huh?
He looked
regular people.
Regular people.
You know.
Regular people. But like, real cool dude, apparently. I never got a chance to talk to him. I was helping stuff out. But nonetheless, like, people of influence came up and tried the booth. And they were like, oh, this is amazing. Wow. Like, that was that. So after the tour, let's see, that was 2022. So I'm trying to think. It's been a crazy go round. Fast forward to end of the summer going into fall 22. We get our full team together. It's about maybe 10, 12 of us. We're a small team. Get our writers together. It was 4 writers. I was one of 4. And we did like a 2-day writing intensive where we just wrote the experiences. And it's not like, the ideas are presented in a somewhat poetic format, but the idea is that we're intentional with it. We're not trying to write these full-on poetry pieces, because what happens if somebody walks up to the booth and they only have a 5th grade education, you know? But you want it to be deep enough and impactful enough to where the owner of the Fortune 500 company, you know, that's dealing with depression, right? But nobody thinks about that because they're rich. Right. They can come up to it and get just as much out of it. So it was like, for me as a slam poet, it was like going from tiger style kung fu to Tai Chi, right? How do I practice this? How do I take the same power that I encompass here and put it into a digestible format for literally everybody? It was a very interesting challenge, but we came out, we had like 19 different experiences. Going into January of this year, we rewrote all of them, because we had some people sit down, and we got some writing professionals sit down and like dissect everything, and they were like, all right, change all of this, that, and gave us all the notes. We basically rewrote all of them, spent hours from there, and then we went to filming. We manufactured the first booths. That whole summer was a blur. We had a pop-up at Hunker House out in LA. We had this whole thing called Your Story Matters. It was an amazing event where we just had different people take like giant, like 24 by 36 like photos, put them on the wall and tell their story. And the amount of people was like, you look at their face, you wouldn't know they were dealing with suicidal thoughts. You wouldn't know they were dealing with depression. You wouldn't know they were dealing with whatever. And that was the idea. So we had over 600 people come through. We dropped a documentary on that too. We also have a documentary about the tour. It was insane.
Wow.
So fast forward to that summer, we did our second wave of filming. So we had 12 different presenters do 19 different experiences. Again, I got a chance to be a co-writer and a presenter. So my face is in the booth. The first booth was installed at Pont City Market in Atlanta. And they just extended our contract with us. So
The booth in Atlanta.
it's in the ground.
Oh wow.
It's in there. So the idea is to get physical booths in the ground. So right now I'm working with some businesses in Williamsburg to get one in Williamsburg.
Okay.
Because most people don't realize this, but the homeless population of Williamsburg has been pretty high. You know, there's no shelters there, and the city doesn't want to
Really?
build shelters because it's a tourist city. They don't like the idea of
The aesthetics.
the aesthetic of having a shelter there, because
Wow.
Williamsburg.
Right.
So, but this is one thing I think that could help. So, I'm working with a small business now. We're working to raise money to get a booth there.
That's dope.
So, yeah, that's.
And so I just want to let you know you've left your mark. You're still leaving it, but
I appreciate it, man.
the mud on your boots is real deep, baby. Because you
Listen,
done been
We've been
traveling.
We've been in the trenches, but
Yes.
that's what walking with God will do to you, man.
Yes.
Because it ain't been easy, but it's been rewarding. You
Yeah.
know, to look back and be like, oh, like I got a chance to be a part of this. So I've mentioned all that to say Slam Connection. I've been hinting at that this whole time.
Yes, you have.
Slam Connection. So being from Williamsburg, there's no artistic outlets for people that want to get into stuff. You know, there's an arts, like, Williamsburg is low-key an artsy city. There are so many talented people in that city, but no platforms for them to do it, to do anything on.
Why do you think that is?
There's a lot of reasons. I think one of the major reasons now is that the city is growing. There's like over 100,000 people in the greater Williamsburg area, which is more than it's ever been. Williamsburg has always been a small town, but it's
I was about to
growing.
say it's not even that big.
It's not, but it's growing. That city is really starting to grow, and it's starting to take on a life of its own. There's new and younger businesses popping up. You know, some of those businesses have been there for years, but now, like, new businesses popping up on the southern side of Williamsburg, closer to Newport News. It's a place called the Edge District. A lot of young new businesses popping up over there. People that are really trying to revamp. So there's never really been like a strong endorsement of the art scene there, even with William and Mary there, which is wild. But I've always wanted to do something there. When I was at Liberty, I started this group called Poetic Soul Association, and essentially we taught people how to write and perform poetry, and tried to get them confident enough to just stand on stage and give them a platform to do so. It was going well until COVID said shut it down. But people were coming out. People you'd never think were expressing themselves. I was like, okay, that became part of the precursor, again, to Slam Connection. So I was talking to God. I'm like, okay, God, what do I call this? Because I have this idea, and I feel you saying it's time to strike the iron now, but I don't know what to call it. He said, call it Slam Connection. I'm like, cool. I was going to call it I-64 Slam because, you know, we write on the...
Yeah.
I was going to call it that. He's like, no, call it this. All right. We call it that, and originally it was supposed to be just a little group, but I was like, oh no, it needs to be a nonprofit. I don't got money to start a nonprofit.
Right.
What I'm talking about. I'm fresh out of college. I'm working at the time I was working at Ross as a stockroom manager. I don't got time to start a nonprofit, but I spent 2 years just networking, right? Got in contact with Poetry Society of Virginia. That's where I got in contact with, that's where I connected with Verbbenders, venue on 35th down in Norfolk. Started frequenting that space, getting close with the people there. And when they heard when I told them about what I was trying to do in Williamsburg, they were like, oh, word? You trying to start there? All right, cool. This is what you want to do, right? And they connected me with people that was dropping jewels, giving me game. And I'm like, all right, so this is a real community. Say less. So started moving like that. I didn't even start really touching anything until I had the knowledge. So I spent like a year and a half, 2 years just in the ground, in the trenches. Like,
Let's go back to what we said about taking your time with it.
I'm on God's timing. I got nothing to prove to nobody.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And plus, what I'm gonna say, I'm from Williamsburg, Virginia. Nobody's taking me seriously at this point. Like, let's be real. Like, I'm from the colonial capital. Like, nobody's taking me seriously right now. So I got nothing to
When
prove.
you put it like that.
I mean, listen, Williamsburg is cool, but it's also dusty. All right, I'm gonna be real. Like, it's dusty, but we're scraping the dust off. It's cool.
Okay.
But I got nothing to prove. So what I did was, I'm like, you know what? Slam Connection. We need a slam team. That's something that we need to do. And then, but our whole thing is, we're also using arts as a form of community engagement. Shout out to listening, right? Their whole thing was mentorship. So using arts to mentor youth. And they had different programs and stuff like that, but that was one of their main focuses. That's why Freedom School fit their brand so well.
Right.
With us, it was like, we want to use it as community engagement. How many times do we see the city with all this money, but there's no shelters? You know, because there's clearly a homeless population. They put out the signs at intersections saying, hey, no panhandling.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
We got them too.
And they put them joints out, hey, call the cops. And then, was it in 2012, the city was caught and got in trouble because they, like, were taking homeless people off the streets and busing them out to other cities. So busing them out to Richmond, busing them out to Newport News, Hampton, and giving them $100 and getting them off the bus and saying, hey, go away. Because Williamsburg cares about their image.
Of course.
Listen, I found out about it. I was like, ain't no way. They was like, yeah, back in 2012. Like,
And Liberty not in Williamsburg?
Liberty's in Lynchburg. That's...
I know, I was being petty.
Yeah, oh.
I'm just saying, they sound like a perfect pair.
Hey, listen, we don't talk about Bruno. We don't talk about Bruno, all right? Listen. All right, but okay, so there's a lot of things I'm like, and plus, one thing I saw was like the youth crime rate in the city was starting to rise. More and more kids was getting in trouble with the law. Not because Williamsburg is a crazy city, because they're bored. There's nothing, outside of sports, there's nothing for those kids. That city offers middle school and high school kids nothing, which I'm like,
that's messed up.
which is wow. You know, Williamsburg has a dance scene. There's like a whole there's entire like dance like groups in Williamsburg. They're for the kids. I found out because I was working at an elementary school, and one of the kids was like, yeah, I gotta go to dance practice. I'm like, oh, who you dance with? I dance with this group. They do this stuff over here, and yeah, like I've been dancing for a couple years. I'm like, I've never heard of this.
Right.
Like, where y'all been? Like, what you talking about? But nobody's promoting it. I'm like, all right, cool. So we get Slam Connection together. In 2022, we had our first public open mic. This is after almost a year plus of just digging, getting in the ground. Originally, I was trying to work with Poetry Society, and originally, Slam Connection was supposed to be an extension of them. Problem is, Poetry Society, they're a slightly older crowd, and they had more of a set way of doing things.
Right.
They wanted to branch out, and I was like, hey, this is my idea. They were like, all right, cool, but nobody really acted on it.
Right.
I'm like, all right, cool. Writers Guild of Virginia, on the other hand, same kind of crowd. They focus on all kinds of writing, not just poetry. But they heard about what I was doing. They said, hey, you want to join our executive board? I said, let's jump in. What y'all got for me? They said, hey, listen, we got a venue. If you got an idea for what you want to do, we can book this joint. We can do an open mic, whatever. We can put it in a venue. We got you. I'm like, all right, say less. I got this open mic. It's like, we can get at least 20 people in the room. We can do that. They said, all right, bet. Book it. 3 weeks later, we had our first open mic. I'm like, oh, see, this is what movement looks like. We moving. We outside. Chugga, chugga. All right. Listen, man.
Chugga,
chugga. Because it was different because I was like, I knew what God said.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, I'm acting on that. I'm like, all right, say less. First open mic, July 2022. It's a stormy night in the middle of the summer. And I'm like, all right, ain't nobody coming out here. 50 people rolled out to this little room.
Rain deters people.
People don't go to church in the rain. I'm like, they're not coming to this open mic. 50 people rolled out to this joint, and we had almost 20 performers. Like, it was a dope night. Like, that's amazing. And it was in the Prime Outlets in Williamsburg. This place called the Book Warehouse. It used to be called that. The owner was so happy to see. He's like, yeah, oh yeah, you with us? Oh yeah, because we bought so much business there, and we was making it happen. We had 2 open mics there. Once every first Friday. Just kept it simple. The place shut down. I was like, oh, dang, that sucks. And there went Slam Connection, so I thought. But, again, reaching out to the kids. I had this vision of if we had, like, an inter-school league for, like, Slam, right? What if we did something like that? I'm like, all right, cool. So I went to my old high school, right? Talked with administration, told them about what I was trying to do. They're like, oh, yeah, come on in. We'll connect you with a teacher. They got me connected with an English teacher. Shout out Miss Throckmorton. You're the best. Love you. She has been amazing in facilitating our after school program. Every Wednesday, I go in and I teach kids how to write and perform. and then get them ready to get on stage. So last year was a kind of a guinea pig year. I wrote a curriculum just to give them something to digest, so we can have something. So wrote the first version of the curriculum. We're on like version 2.5, almost a version 3, but yeah. So
Growth, though.
the growth. So got them in there. At the end of the year, they planned their own open mic and ran it after school. And I'm like, all right, we like that. This year, they're going to be performing in a youth grand slam, the first ever in the city. Winner gets the title of Youth Historic Triangle Grand Slam champion. So nobody's ever done that. So yeah, so that's the school side. I got kids from War Hill. That's my old high school. We got Bruton High School in there and YMCA. YMCA, I'm the regional team director for YMCA. So I work with, I'm with Williamsburg and Yorktown. My whole thing is, this is why I know it was God for real. My whole job is oversee, create, and implement team programming for YMCA. I'm like, oh, so I can create new stuff. They say, yeah.
Slime collection.
Listen, the way, you know, the Grinch's grin with his joint, I was like, oh, I was like, oh, it's over. So
it just sounds like the opportunities come for your vision to be manifested. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, God's vision to be manifested through you. You know what I'm saying? But it's like you walk straight into it. You know?
Like, man, I was like, oh, y'all giving me the job, and it's a full-time job, and oh, say less. So I go in there and I create this thing called Writing Storm. I had the idea for Writing Storm because I'm like, what if we had younger kids that want to get into this, but we can't let them perform yet? Let's call it Writing Storm. All right, cool. But it never took off because I was working at the elementary school. It was post-COVID. At the time, after-school programs were not allowed.
Yeah.
I was like, dang. All right.
Did you ever think about doing something virtual?
It's hard. It's hard to do virtual sometimes.
It is.
It's hard.
It is.
You
don't get the same connection with virtually.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to it, but it's different. But maybe in the future. Nothing's off the table at this point.
Right.
But so Writing Storm, I start the program up. It's official. It's on the site. We piloted it at both my sites and I'm over. All right, cool. We had one kid show up, and I'm like, dang. But one thing I've learned, I went to this leadership summit way back in 2019, and I asked, and there's a whole story attached to this of why. Like, I go to this leadership summit, talking about freedom school stuff, right? There was these two people, civil rights leaders. They've done so much. They've led protests. Amazing people. I don't remember their names. I just remember who they were, and I'm like, yes. Yeah. So I was telling them about, like, for Freedom School, they have a thing called the Day of Social Action. So every year the students plan, like, a thing that they're going to do about a hot button issue. Every year the National Freedom School puts out what the Day of Social Action is about. All right, cool. So that year the thing was gun violence, right? Speaking out against gun violence. So the students, they plan to protest up and down the sidewalk strip, like in front of the school, going like up to the neighborhood and back. We had about 40, 45 kids in the program. Only 17 showed up. And my question, now the 17, they went in, we had the drums and everything. We was going crazy. They enjoyed it. It was great. My question to these people at this leadership summit, right? I was like, how do we get those kids to be motivated to use their voice? You know, they live in this country. They're told freedom of speech, but they were the rest of those kids didn't show up because they were afraid that they were going to get shot.
Because they also told them don't talk about stuff.
That part too.
Yeah.
So I'm like, they didn't show up to this protest of gun violence because they were like, I'm not trying to get shot. They would say it in a joke, but you could tell they were serious.
Right.
Like, they were afraid. They were afraid that adults that didn't agree with them cared more about their right to bear arms than their safety. Mm-hmm. How do you motivate kids to do that?
Oh, and program their minds. do, because that's a tangle web.
So exactly. So I'm sitting here like, so I asked them the question. You know what they said? They said, you can't force anybody to protest, but at the same time, thank God for the 17.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God for that 17. And no matter if it was 1, 10, or 1,000 that showed up, put that same energy into them.
Right.
And that's what we did. So fast forward to this YMCA program, that one showed up. I've given him everything I know. It's like he shows up to the dojo. We learning kung fu. Let's do it. And he's getting ready to compete. His growth has been insane, but like he's getting ready to do the thing, man. Like, so back to what I was saying about this Youth Grand Slam. February 3rd at the Williamsburg Library in Colonial Williamsburg, we're having the first ever Youth Historic Triangle Grand Slam. We have, I think, about 6 kids that are going to be competing for.
Is it open to the public?
It's open to the public and it's free $99.
Okay.
Free to get in.
February 3rd.
February 3rd.
I heard that.
Doors open at 12. We're making history. Williamsburg, all the orators, all the writers throughout history that have come through that city, never been anything like this. Thomas Jefferson came through Williamsburg. Never been anything like this. So that's the ground we're breaking. The next week we're having our adult slam. So that's the youth side of it. So let me get back to the story of Slam Connection.
Okay.
This, like, I'll be telling things like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's like, oh yeah, there it is.
But it comes together though.
It comes together. You gotta watch the whole movie though. Like, okay, so that's the youth side of it. So I stuck with them because that we weren't having open mics at the time. So, but I was like, we got to get these open mics going back because one of the things I want to give to these kids is a platform. Because some of these kids, it's like they can write, it's cool, but it's one thing to write and speak in a classroom than it is to speak on a stage behind a mic.
Right.
It's different. So, been working, just looking, just searching. It's like, all right, God, I'm going to let you do what you do. Remember, I was a verb bender this past year. I won their Grand Slam, went to Southern Fried. Verb benders, we family, right? Venue on 35th Street, great place to be. Somebody from Williamsburg goes into the venue. They're like, they did poetry. He was like, oh, that's dope. It's like, oh yeah, I'm from Williamsburg. Oh, do you know Atlas? Yo, get connected with this person. All right. That person is connected with some of the businesses on the Edge District that I mentioned before. They had tried to, there's this place called Column 15 Coffee. They had tried to do an open mic not too long ago. It didn't go too well. So they were like, yo, I heard you trying to do open mics and stuff in Williamsburg. I'm like, ain't no way. I'm like, listen, what y'all got in mind? They said, yo, if you do like one open mic a month, you come in here and we can make it happen. I'm like, and we'll do it for free. They're not charging us a dime to use that space. I'm like, for real? They said, for real. That way we don't got to charge a door. So the amount of people that looked in the window, seen what was going on, just walked in and just joined the community. I'm like, oh yeah, we in business. So our first open mic was the first Friday in April. We'll be going up on a year of doing this. Crazy.
Congratulations.
Sheesh. But first Friday in April, we get in there and we pack the place out. People are like, yo, this is different. We've been waiting for this. That's crazy. We come in there, I forget how many performances we had. It was insane. So we started doing that, and we had a feature from William and Mary. There's an improv group, a couple of improv groups at William and Mary. They've been looking for ways to get into the community. We became the connection.
Right. Which got you in college kids too. Okay.
So we became a connection with the college and the community. So that happened, and so every first Friday we had a Slam Connection as open mic. It's a Column 15 Coffee. Starting back up first Friday, was it January 5th? First Friday in January. And then in September, we started our Slam season. What we do is every second Friday, we have Slam qualifiers. Top 2 winners in the qualifier qualify for our Grand Slam. So we've gone through an entire season. We got one more qualifier January 12th. At the same place, top 2 finishers go to our Grand Slam, which leads us back to the adult Grand Slam. That's February 10th. Literally, the first one February 3rd, the youth. That's on the Saturday, and literally the next Saturday. Same time, same bat channel. Everything. Free to the public. That's our adult slam. And some of the people we got in there the lineup is heavy already. Like, Breeze the Poet, he's in there. We have some poets from William and Mary, this group called Inside Out. They're a theater group, but they got some writers. They can do the thing. They got some people in there. Half the people from the Verb Benders have qualified. Like, it's gonna be tight. But the winner becomes the first ever Historic Triangle champion. So
Awesome.
So yeah, it's been a lot. But God has been good, and this is what it's been about. Yeah.
I'm so proud of you.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it.
I'm so proud of you. So, can you give me a little bit of your spoken word?
A little bit of spoken word.
Yes.
All right. Let me go with, let me tell you something. I had to tell my white friends that black people don't do spooky stuff. We don't go in old abandoned houses. We not running with you in the woods late at night. And if I hear something in the house, we get mad quiet. Black people don't do spooky stuff. So when my friend asked me if I believed in ghosts, before I can summon a no from the pit of my stomach, I remember when I met his uncle. And he looked at me like I was a man possessed. Later that evening, an intrusive conversation about Trump losing the election made the spirit of rebellion flip the table across the room. I remembered. I protested in 2020. Raised my fist to fight something I can't even see, yet floats over my culture every day. I speak out against things that don't even got bodies, but check the police reports. They definitely got bodies. Someone once told me. Africans allowed on the decks of slave ships would rain dance, putting their soul into ocean. That's why hurricanes follow the Middle Passage. America wears the name tag of Christian on her chest so proudly, but this witch been mixing black blood, southern trees, and cotton to conjure up the spirit of capitalism long before African traditions were deemed demonic, because the map of the United States is nothing more than the world's biggest Ouija board that wasn't closed correctly. No wonder why men in Charlottesville holding tiki torches were just imitating phantoms. A racist is nothing more than a spirit worshiper, a person that would rather burn for the dead than change for the living. No one told them that heaven and hell run the same diversity programs. I had to tell my white friends that black people don't do spooky stuff. But when he asked me if I believed in ghosts, I told him that this country be the biggest haunted house I'm not allowed to scream in. There's a reason why black boys be born into this world as blameless angels, but become street demons with clips about as long as an exorcism, or become the banished banshees banging on the walls of jail cells. My existence in this country is paranormal activity, because if I died unjustly and it ain't caught on camera, it never happened. My friend asked me if I believed in ghosts. I asked him if he believed in change. Before he ghosted me, he said, "Hey man, not all white people into that spooky stuff." Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Listen, man, there's a lot of big things on the horizon. Like, listen, Williamsburg, Virginia, we're in the middle of an arts renaissance right now. A lot of the spoken word, slam, poetry, a lot of that is really in resurgence, because it was here. Then COVID kind of came out, kind of pre-COVID, COVID era. A lot of that died out. Now it's coming back. So,
we outside.
We outside. If you want to get on the stage, now's the time.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You heard it here.
You know what I'm saying? But the whole point is, I'm trying to relate to you. Mm-hmm. Aren't we all just controllers? People that have been played, pressing each other's buttons, trying to be hooked up to a system that don't really work like that, but... you know what I'm saying? Suddenly, we got I created a whole universe right there. Boom, there it is. And that's what you want to do when you're talking about slam poems and like slam pieces and performance pieces. You got to create context, right? Time, space, matter, reality, right? Who's talking? Your active voice. Who's talking? Who are you talking to?
The battery is low. Please charge the battery when you can.
That's a poem right there. That's a poem right there. So that's the poem right there. Battery is low. I feel just like that doorbell right now. All right. Everybody walks right by me every day, but never charges me. But they look at me like I'm the annoyance when I say I'm out of energy. Why does everybody just see me as a ring light? but don't see me as the light. Da, 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 da. There's your poem.
God damn. Okay. Yeah.
I pen and push my performance so much because you get on a slam stage, it's not enough just to sound dope. It's not enough just to have the entendre. It's not enough just to say that metaphor. It's dope, but you got it's creating the experience. You know, when you're writing to perform and writing to get on stage, it's about how do I write something that is meant to be spoken out, meant to be performed, meant to be like to create and captivate the room. You know, I'm not just telling my story isn't enough. How do I make the story relatable to where I'm bringing you here? Like I got this piece now about helping kids, right, and being a mentor, but it's like, you know, being a mentor is like being an avenger, right? Exactly. Like being a mentor, being especially the kids, it's like, and to be a poet is to be a Peter Parker, and that's how the poem like starts. So the whole idea, the whole poem exists in like what I call like a time loop, right? So I start off the poem as if I'm midway through a poem, right?
Okay.
So I start off like, and I hope this time loop never ends. With great power comes great responsibility. Da 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 da. Then midway through the poem, and I hope this time loop never ends. And then that's the whole thing because I'm here because that teacher in 10th grade helped me.
Yeah.
That teacher in 10th grade, you know, said, hey, you should write more. And now, literally, that was room 2116 Ward Hill High School. Same high school every Wednesday, right? I'm in room 2108, literally directly across the hallway, doing the same thing somebody told me to do, right? So it's a time loop, right? But you bring that out in a performance setting, right? So it also adds a layer to your writing, because now it's like, it's not just writing, because everybody's a dope writer. Like, I think the crazy thing is there's so many amazing writers out here. It's actually surprising. I'm like, oh, so you could write this like this the whole time? You've been sitting in the back? Don't make it up on stage. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
everybody's not that performer though.
that performance is the different. Being at food for thought.
Yeah.
Being at food for thought. Like the difference between good poets, great poets, and the elite, as you'd say, performance.
Do you teach writing?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Teach workshops I teach in-person workshops and whatever. I also do one-on-ones for, it's like $20 a person.
Alright.
So, yeah. If you ever need anything, like, because slam is really on a renaissance right now. So, like, getting on a stage and trying it, because it'll push you. It'll push you, because, like I said before with some of the artists that we was talking about, a lot of people get up on that stage, think they got it like that, and they get humbled real quick. Because it's like, oh yeah, I'm dope. It's like, yeah, you got words, but what else?
Yeah.
What else?
Hey.
Can't save all of them. This fight you're fighting will never be won. The boy picks up a starfish, looks at him, and boldly retorts, but I can save this one, and throws it back in. You see, some of y'all are going through life like you're just going for the ride. And the funny thing about life is it's just like a salt track, because no one make it out alive. So don't you get it. Don't you get it. Tomorrow isn't promised. Yesterday is done. All you got right now is literally right now. But oh, I got that boldness. I'm talking bolder than the boulders I carry on my shoulders. I'm talking bolder than the boulders I carry on my shoulders. Bolder than the bold messages in subliminal mainstream music. I'm talking bolder than Metro booming through a subwoofer in an old Honda Civic. I'm sorry. I was too busy helping change lives to realize that you think I'm playing. Well, sleep on me, and I'll rock the cradle like rockabye. Watch me rock it by on some NASA vibes. Call us a rocket-powered lullabies, and watch me rise in the morning like a sunrise, like a sight for sore eyes. And I got some advice, like don't relay race with steak knives. Or in other words, don't let me catch you running your chops. Be bold enough to think outside the box. I dare you to be bold enough to box with bulls in China shops. Be bold enough to stop injustice on the spot. responsibly. Be kind to those who are honestly lost in the philosophy of those who are lost to idolatry, or those who by proxy only have enough money to shop for groceries at Dollar Tree. I dare you. I triple dog dare you to be bold enough to see the world for its brokenness, but humble enough to know that you can't fix it alone. And I'm bold enough to change the tone. Like, just know that when I brush the dust off my shoes, I'm more serious than when Joker starts singing the blues. And I don't need to be loud to be proud. Like, for example, I used to love that Lil Wayne line about real G's and lasagna. But now I know that real power moves in silence like Wakanda. See, I used to love that Lil Wayne line about real G's and lasagna, but now I know that real power moves in silence like Wakanda. And I know that because today, I got that boldness, and today, I look at the mirror and say, you can't hold me back, and today, I refuse to chase my future while living today in the past tense. So in the name of Jesus, I'm claiming my mountain. There we go. So in the name of Jesus, today I'm claiming my mountain, because today, oh yes, today, I got that boldness. And it ain't going anywhere anytime soon. Thank you.
Tink did not come to play with you hoes. I came to slay, bitch.